Hello and Assalamu alaikum. This is Ursha Zera, Senior Manager at MedAngle, and I welcome you all to another episode of It's a Match Specialty Series, a deep dive into different US specialties.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aisha Data, team lead here at MedAngle. And before we begin, I would like to ask our speakers, Dr. Mahnoor Yousif and Dr. Mahnoor to please introduce themselves.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be here. Thank you so much for having us here today. So I'm Mahnoor. I graduated from Rawalpindi Medical University in 2020. And just like a little brief overview about how my journey was. So like I did my house job, and then I did my step one in 2022. Then I did my step two in 2023, along with my step three, and then applied for this year's match and got in, alhamdulillah. And well, I think my journey, one thing that for me was important in my journey that I would highlight later as well would be that I did like 1 year of psychiatry residency over here in Pakistan, and that helped me a lot in my journey into the interview process and getting into the match. So that's it for now.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Mahnoor Yousif Shaikh. I'm a graduate of Dow Medical College. I graduated in 2020, and I matched this year in psychiatry at University of Texas at Tyler. I did my house job right after graduation, and then after that, I did my steps. And something I think that was unique to my journey was the fact that I ended up using a lot of non-psych and non-medical experiences, which like I was told might not be a good idea. And I was a little apprehensive about it, but they were the most talked about in all of my interviews. And so my season went a lot better than what I was expecting because my journey was unique and my application was unique. And I think that that's something that a lot of people can benefit from. So I'm excited to share that.
Lovely. Thank you so much for the lovely introductions. And congratulations to the both of you for getting matched. So obviously, as is already obvious by our speaker intros, the specialty that we will be diving into today is psychiatry. So let's start off with the very first thing that everyone must be wondering, and that is, why did you choose psychiatry? Why this and why not any other US specialty? And then what are some of the things that anybody who's going into this specialty needs to keep in mind so that they can, plan ahead for this, let's say. Dr. Vakar, if you would like to start us off.
Okay, so I think I was pretty much set on psychiatry from the beginning. My journey changed a lot in between med school, but I think I was like very determined because comes from a lot of background as well. So my mom's a psychologist, and I have an uncle who's a psychiatrist as well. So, and I had in my family's psychiatric issues that I saw firsthand as well. So, it was just something gradually building up for me. So I knew that psychiatry is something that I wanted to do. So I think for me, the journey was a little something that I didn't decide just like right in my house job or my med school. It was something that was just building on gradually, and it's just like led me over there. So I think that was it. For me, that was it. Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Shaikh?
Yeah, so I think the same goes for me. Like I knew even before I started medical school, I just got an admission in medical school and I already knew I'm just going to do psychiatry. And then, along the way I was like, you've not experienced psychiatry at all. Like just wait till you go to the ward and see if you actually like it. But I think even if I did end up liking other things, like I liked medicine a little bit at some point, I liked surgery a little bit at some point, but in my heart, I always knew that I liked psychiatry the most, and this is what I want to do. And then I did end up doing my rotations, and then I did my rotations in house job in psychiatry as well. And then that just solidified the deal. I was like, this is it. This is the place I want to be. This is what I want to do. And I'm glad that it worked out.
Okay, amazing. That it's good to know that you had this always in your mind and then you matched as well. All right, so there's another thing that I think a lot of people who are maybe going into the next cycle or aspiring for this are okay, what are the numbers like? How many programs or positions are available? What do the scores look like? And what is the match rate? So Dr. Sheikh, would you like to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, of course. So the numbers are actually quite different from that of internal medicine. Like internal medicine is a very IMG-friendly specialty. So you have a lot more spots, there are a lot more programs, which are more than happy to take the visa requiring graduates. But when you come to psychiatry, things are very different. And American grads are actually now referring to psychiatry as the new term, which means that it's just so competitive and they all want to do it. but there aren't enough spots and there aren't enough programs. So when I was applying, I think there were around 300 programs from what I remember. And then when you start cutting it down according to your limitations, like year of graduation, and for example, like I needed a visa, so there were lots of programs that I couldn't apply to as a result of that. And the number came down to be around 120 something. I mean, Dr. Vakar can probably like back me up on this. It wasn't a big number. If you compare that to IM, there's like 150, 170, even 180. So that's a lot more choice. And so you are a little more comfortable that, okay, I'm applying to so many places. I'm going to hear back from some of them. But in psychiatry, the game is completely different. And if we're talking about specific numbers, so according to this year's NRMP data, there's around like 2,261 seats, out of which 185 are for the visa requiring international students. So that's extremely competitive. I think that comes down to less than 10%. If like you can maybe do the math and figure it out. So yeah, I mean, it's very competitive and it's like this every year. I think even last year it was something along the same lines. And I think the bottom line is that there's not a lot of places that offer visa, which is why it's just considered a very competitive specialty.
That does
And I
make a
think
lot
I'll
of
just
sense.
add one
Yeah.
more thing to saying, that, you know, like internal medicine, when you add the filter it out with the geographic preferences, then you like, you know, you could filter out the visa requiring programs to like around 150, 160. But in our case in psychiatry, if you apply the like geographic, like you don't have room to apply the geographic preference now that that is in the ERAS, because otherwise I think that would leave us with like what, 20, 30 programs at most. Or like if, like I mean we won't have a lot of options, so like, you know, geographic preference for us goes like out of the basket for us, like that's not an option for us, I think.
Okay, and also, so what about like your step scores? To how much of a part do they play? How does year of graduation come in? And then, like stuff like publications and USCs and all of that. I will also touch upon this a bit later, so we can, not maybe talk about publications and USCs, but I do want to know how scores in year of graduation plays a part here.
So I can actually take this one
Yeah.
because I didn't have a good CK score, and this was a big concern of mine because, like, especially when you're like from universities, like I think this has now become very common. Everybody gets a high score, right? Like nothing less than 250, like you need to get a 250. Like everybody around you is getting 250s, 260s. And, like obviously everyone works hard with that goal in mind. And then, you've made that preparation and you're feeling confident and you do sit for the exam. But sometimes life happens and things don't go according to plan. So I didn't have a good CK score at all. And I remember when I got it, I felt like extremely isolated. And I felt like, this is it. Like my dreams of pursuing the USMLE residency are over. And there's nothing I can do about it because I didn't know anybody, who had a low score and who ended up matching. Like every single person that I talked to was like, oh, 250. 256, 260, 270, nothing below that. The lowest that I heard was 240s. So I just thought, like there's nothing I can do about it. But I'm glad that like I did reach out. And again, I think I'm adding another layer here, which is the idea of having good mentors, like the importance of having good mentors. So I think I was very lucky that I had good mentors who really gave me this like sound advice, and they encouraged me and they said, you know what, like don't let this one thing define you. And I think moving on further in the session, we are going to touch upon the PD survey. Dr. Vakar is going to talk more about that. And then you'll get to see that the scores, they matter, but not as much as they matter in other specialties. So if you don't get a 240, if you don't get a 250, it doesn't mean that you can't match in psychiatry. You can match with lower score. The point is that your commitment to the specialty needs to be visible through and through. And I think that's what worked for me, that like I was committed to pursuing psychiatry, and that reflected in my application from the beginning. So yeah.
Dr. Vakar, is there something that
Yeah.
you would like to add here?
Yeah, what Dr. Shaikh was saying. So, there is like so NRMP every year launches, like after the match is over, they launch datas and everything to tell you like, what the actual like, what the situation is. So taking it what Dr. Shaikh said, so there's this like 2022 NRMP survey, which was the charting outcomes in the match for that year. So according to that survey, the mean step 2 score for the students who were the US non-US IMGs, that was like a CK score of 236. So I mean, like there are a lot of people who come in and tell you that, oh my God, you need to get a 250 and you're gotta get a 260. So for psychiatry, that is a little different. The scores, if like you're getting a like normal average score, that's fine. And what's more important is like psychiatry is a specialty that like does a more holistic review, and your commitment to this field matters a lot. Like previously it was like, people would apply to psychiatry as a backup field. It's not the case anymore. Like psychiatry needs to be your main focus, and they can tell you from that, they can tell seeing your CV if it was your main focus or you were just like applying for it as a backup. So I feel like, now the things have changed a little bit. It's just not like very score dependent. It's like a lot of different things that play part into your, final application.
All right, I think that was a very good overview of everything. Let's now talk about for anyone aspiring to go into, psychiatry, and let's say if they are in fourth year or final year of med school, how can they build a psychiatry-oriented CV? So Dr. Mahnoor, Yousif, your thoughts on this, please?
Yeah, of course. So I think the best thing that someone in med school can do is that get in touch with the psychiatry department of your medical school. Get in touch with the professors there. Somebody is probably working on some kind of research. Try to get involved in that. Show them your interest. Tell them, like, I know how to do research. If you don't, then please learn how to do research. It's quite easy. Like, there's so many places that are offering workshops. You can learn online. So learn that and then show your enthusiasm to the people who are working, to your professors, to other consultants who are in your university, just because they are like the most accessible to you, right? Like you're going to meet them every day. You can easily follow up with them, and and they know you and you know them. So it's very easy for them to trust you, very easy to give you work. Now, there are a lot of places where research is not really like that, and it's not done as regularly. So in those cases, what I would say is that you don't have to start with something big, right? Like when I started working on research in Dow, research culture in Dow was like very, very new. Lots of people didn't know much about research. So then we started with something small, like a case report. If we saw an interesting case, we would talk about that, or like a small cross-sectional study or an LT. Like these are things that don't take a lot of time. They get published easily. They can easily get your foot at the door. And this is a great way for you to build rapport with your professors, with your consultants. Like they'll see that you are serious, you are committed. Okay, they're not giving you a topic, they're not giving you a direction. You have an idea and you're proactive, you're taking that initiative, you're the one who's hunting them down, because I mean, that's just how it is, right? Like professors, consultants, they're very busy. No one's going to hand out anything to you. But if you are interested and you are enthusiastic, that does go a long way. So that's the first thing that they should do. Other than that, there are lots of ways that you can just be active by yourself. Like there are lots of student-led societies, student-led ventures that you can start by yourself. You can involve other students, other rest of your batchmates, your juniors. Like for example, there are lots of societies in Dow. I don't think there's a mental health society, but there are lots of new societies that have sprung up after I graduated, and there was all student-led initiative. So you can do something to that, and just to show that, you are passionate about mental health, you want to create awareness about it, you're doing whatever you can in your capacity, because programs really look towards this favorably, like it shows that you are committed to the cause, and this is something that you really feel strongly about. You're doing it with limited resources, with limited guidance. So imagine what you can do if you did have like proper guidance, proper resources. So that's something that people can definitely start doing. Other than that, please give your steps as early as possible.
All right. So okay, another thing that I want to, ask was, are there any specific blockers that come into play, talking about all of this, the CV building and everything, and how can one overcome them to match?
I think Dr. Vakar can take this.
Yeah, Dr.
Sure.
Vakar.
I can take that. So I think blockers in those instances can be a lot in your CV. For instance, if you don't get a good step score, that can be a blocker in your CV. But, and for instance, a lot of people now who want to go for US clinical experience, they cannot go. Like a lot of visa appointments are delayed, a lot of rejections are coming in. So I feel like that's a blocker as well for a lot of people. So I think finding the way around it would be, how do you work around that would be the goal, should be the goal. So, if you don't have a good step 2 score, that's all right. You work on it, you can compensate with it with your step 3, like, give your step 3 as early as possible. That for IMGs is very, very important that you give your step 3 if you can. For psychiatry as a field, it's important as well. And then if you do not get US clinical experience, there are always avenues that you can go reach out to people in Pakistan. There are a lot of people who are trained, they're working in Lahore and Karachi as well, who are US trained physicians. So they practice those guidelines and everything. So meanwhile, if your visas and everything is just like not working out and you have opportunities over here as well, like make most of the time that you have over here and, reach out to those physicians. Then there are like conferences that come in over here, and a lot of, just like keep a tab on those conferences that are happening for specifically for psychiatry, and meet people over there. And there are going to be a lot of people, international people coming in from the US and everything. So they would be able to give you opportunities, like remote opportunities that would be available for you. So you can always work on them, and not just like just if you cannot go over there for the US clinical experience right at that point, or you have like you want to build your CV but you do not have those opportunities or the like money in those terms, like going over there. So there are things that you can still work on over here while working on your US clinical experience, etc., and other things. So I feel like there are a lot of things that can be done, like utilize your time in Pakistan, like your opportunities, like in a good way. And yeah, so I think that would be really helpful.
All right. And what about, so I believe you also wanted to emphasize on the importance of networking, right? When it comes to a psychiatry match, so, or a match in general. So could you enlighten us upon that as well? A bit?
Yeah, I think networking is very important. We underestimate the value of networking that has, because like we always like everybody's telling you you need to get like good step scores and that's it. Now I don't think so that's it anymore, because it's getting so competitive. Like imagine like somebody who you're applying to a program, the program has like 1,000 applicants, they're going to filter out those applicants, and now it's signaling in the CV and everything. It's everything is becoming so directed, like very filtered out. So if and everybody who's applying over there is going to be as good as you. So maybe if somebody in the program can vouch for you and knows you, or you've worked with them, that can be something, that a factor that stands out for you. So if you've worked with a consultant and an attending in the US, and for instance they know another attending that the program that they're applying to, you have a good rapport with that attending, you can always tell them that, hey, I'm applying to this program, so once if my program is there, can you email the program, like a program coordinator or anybody, like okay, hey, I worked with you and I'm a good candidate, so please do consider me. So that is what the value of networking is, for instance. Or you can reach out to people if you did a research project with them, and you've worked with them for a good couple of months, and then you're applying to their program, then they already know you. So that just like that lifts your CV a little bit more from that pile as compared to the other people. So I feel like networking is important. So that just like, it's not about that your application is not good enough that you're needing a boost. It's just like everybody's over there is just as good as you. So that network or knowing that person over there in that program is just going to help you boost a little bit, and then it's up to you about in your interview how you stand out. Then it's you, the ball is in your court then.
So I just want to add to that and say that networking is a long game. Like you can't reach out, like a month before your application and say, please recommend me because I got your number from this group, and oh, because you're Pakistani, like things don't work like that. So when we say networking, it really means that, like you build this like rapport with the person who you're asking to recommend you. So you worked with them, like Dr. Okar mentioned, you work with them over a period of time. So they know your work ethic, they know your professionalism, they know your CV inside and out. So they do feel comfortable recommending you to the program. And those are the kind of recommendations that go a long way. Other than that, you can ask many people to recommend you, and they might even say, oh yeah, we will recommend you, but they're not going to bear fruit because obviously like you've not worked with them, they don't know you. So they're just saying it because they want to be polite, but that's really not going to help. But if you work with someone over a long period of time, then they feel more comfortable contacting you, recommending you, sorry. And the other thing that I want to add is that even if you have recommendations, they might not work out. Like you can have solid recommendations and you might not hear back from cases. So like please be prepared from that. For that. Like you can have very solid recommendations, and then at the end of the day, it is like at the PT's discretion. They might like call you for an interview. They might not call you for an interview. Even after the interview, you don't know. So like all this is to say that don't just focus solely on networking, like focus on making yourself like a very strong, solid candidate, so that you are that whenever any program director sees you, anyone interviews you, they do feel like, yeah, you would be like a good fit for our team and we would really like to have you. That should be the emphasis, not just, oh, I have to build contacts and I have to know everybody and everything else will just work itself out.
All right, I think that covers it. And I just wanted to want Dr. Shaikh to touch upon this. How her non-med and non-psych experiences helped.
Oh yeah, of course. Um, yeah, for sure. So I ended up using one IM letter and three psych letters. And out of those three psych letters, one of them was from a volunteer experience for a clinic that I worked here at in Karachi for like a good 8, 9 months. And like there were a lot of people who again who discouraged me. They said, what, it's a volunteer experience. Like, how can you use that letter? What's that gonna do for you? But I said, like I worked there long term for like 8 to 9 months, and I feel like these people really know me. She can write me a really nice letter. And all the stuff that I've worked on here, like it's very close to my heart. Like I would really, really like for that to be reflected in my application. And if anybody asks me about that, I can just go on and on about it. And that is what happened. So I'm really glad that I was authentic and I followed my gut instead of listening to what everybody else was saying. And I think that's like another thing that people should focus on when they're applying, because there's like so much background noise. Everybody's telling you so many things, and it's good to take advice. It's good to reach out and have people tell you what's up, but I think more than that, it's also important to be able to filter that what is it that will actually work for me. And I do think that that is what like really helped me, because my experiences, like I said, were quite non-traditional. So I ended up using the IM letter, and my IM letter was also talked about. Like I did, one of the people who interviewed me ended up knowing my letter writers, the IM doctor who I rotated with. And he said, what, like he's written such a nice letter for you, and this is an IM rotation, but like he makes it sound as if like पता नहीं तुम क्या कर रही थी कितने डिप्रेशन वाले मरीज थे जो ठीक हो गए तुम्हें देख के and I don't know what he wrote, but I remember telling him that I'm going to be applying in psychiatry, and so I would really like it if you write the letter recommending me for that, so if you could just like touch upon those qualities that would talk about how I would be a good fit for psychiatry, rather than just focusing on, her physical examination was so good and she could like order labs like this and that. And so that's what he did. And that letter was talked about. And this was an old letter. Like I did this rotation in 2020. So that's another thing that I kept hearing, कि, oh, purane letters ka to koi fayda hi nahi hota. Like you need to have recent experience. But I mean, like Dr. Vakar said, there are very real limitations, right? Like you can't just go whenever you want to the US. There's visa limitations, there's financial limitations. So it is important to make the most of what you have and see what you can do with the resources that are available to you. So I ended up using that letter. I did have like a very, I would say, good relationship with that letter writer. I was in touch with him throughout. So he was more than happy to write me a letter. He did write me a letter with like an updated date. So the letter was like brand new. It was written in 2023, but the rotation was 2020, and that is the date that I mentioned. Other than that, the other non-psych experience that I used was that I talked about my debating experiences. So I was a debater all throughout high school, and then I ended up becoming like an assistant debating coach during medical school. So I talked about that in one of my is one of my 10 experiences, and that was also talked about, that like, oh, tell us about this and what's that like and how do you think that's like shaped you to be a better physician. And I would just like, and I would do parliamentary debates, so I really tied that in with that it really helps me think on the spot. I'm good at conversing with people, I can articulate my thoughts, things like that. The other thing that I wrote was that I have a blog on Instagram, a poetry blog, so I mentioned that blog, and then that was something that came up quite a bit, that so like this is a really tough field. So like, how would you like manage your emotions? How would you like regulate yourself? And I said, my blog is a great way for me to regulate my emotions, because it's a creative outlet. Like I just go and pour all my thoughts out. I share my feelings, and that really helps. And it was a really like, it made for really good interview pieces as well, like great things to talk about. The conversation was like never dull, because there was always something that was coming out. So I would like really urge people to also bring that. Like I can't speak for other specialties, but for psychiatry, all these things were very, very appreciated. They kept coming up in all of my interviews. The clinic that I volunteered at, even though that was a mental health clinic, but it was based in Pakistan, this was the only thing that they asked me. Like nobody asked me about my US clinical experience. I think maybe one or two programs were like, okay, so how do you compare between, the US clinical experience in Pakistan and here, the US clinical experience, and, how psychiatry is practiced in Pakistan, like always in like a comparison contrast, never like, oh, where did you rotate? Like that never came up. Nobody cared about that. Everybody's like, oh, tell us about that. Oh, this sounds so cool. Oh, what was the festival that you guys did? So we did a mental health festival, like in honor of World Mental Health Day. This was all they asked me. Oh, how did you guys do it? What was that like? How did you manage it? So, I mean, this is stuff that I feel strongly about, so I could talk about it. And people who are interviewing you, they've been doing it for a really long time. So they can also tell when someone is genuine and someone is actually passionate about these things versus someone just writing it down for the effect of it. So, I mean, Yeah, I definitely think that's something that everybody should focus on, like Dr. Vakar said, psychiatry is very holistic. It's not just, we need you to be good in your exams and we need you to do really well on your step scores and that's all we care about. They really like care about you as a person. So yeah, it's a great field to be in, guys.
Amazing. I definitely like, really like how holistic all of this was, and how there's so many ways that you can shape the experiences that you've had towards this. And I think what you guys
Yeah.
mentioned earlier as well, that your commitment towards it shows in all of your interviews, your personal statement, your CV, and all of that.
So I think I want to add to what Dr. Sheikh said, that how the experience itself, that the US clinical experience doesn't come up, but the like how for instance I did my 1 year of psychiatry residency in Pakistan. So I think the only interview, like whenever the interview I did, like everybody would pick up my CV and would ask me that oh, so you did like 1 year of residency in Pakistan, so how was that? So they would just want to know, like, what did you do over there? And then they would ask the question that how would you explain it, like in the context of, like, what's the difference that you felt like in the US clinical experience? They were like not really interested in my US rotations, but they were very, very interested in getting to know, like, what did I do in Pakistan, how do I compare that to the US rotations? And that is very, very important, that how everybody says that being in US is important. No, it's not that important. It's like your commitment to the specialty is important. And then, like, it's such a holistic review. For instance, everybody told me to not put my hobbies and everything in this experience section, because in 2020, in our era CV, we didn't have a hobby section separate one. That was omitted one. I think this era CV has a hobby section. But I did put in my hobbies over there. So I mentioned how I swim, I do swimming, I play badminton and everything. And that is something that everybody asked me in my, in my interviews as well. Oh, so we see that, you're swimming, and, I've won a couple of competitions as well. So, that was something that was talked about. So it's just not solely that they're interested in just knowing you, like, oh, you're going to be a good doctor. Your step scores are going to tell you them that you're going to be a good doctor. You've already done that. So your step scores and your letters are going to tell you. But your application needs to tell you that you're going to be a good person, because it's a different specialty where you're going to be talking to people. So, for instance, I was the president of the research society as well in my college. So, they would ask me, okay, so if you've had a tough situation, like, in that experience, tell us about that. So, I didn't have to think of a story to, like, tell them. I already had a lot of experiences. So I was just like, okay, this is what happened. So, I could tell them that, can be applied in a patient experience as well. For instance, it's a different specialty. Patients are a little bit more, on a different side, rather than just like, you want to labs and everything. So you want to be like able to, like, talk to the patients, control them, de-escalate them. So, I was like able to tie it up that, how all of these leadership roles help me with in my specialty as well. So, you want to have that holistic view in your application, just not focus on your US clinical experience or your psychiatry experience. A lot of things are just building your CV for that particular field, basically.
Lovely. Okay, okay. Let's move on to the next part, and that is, so I think we've kind of talked about this already in all of the things that we've been discussing, but what does the match season specifically look like for psych applicants? When can they start applying? When do they start searching for programs? And then how do the interviews come in? Do they come? So this is something that an internal medicine resident told us, and then neurology resident told us, that there is a difference between the time frame as well, right? Because sometimes for one specialty, you get interviews earlier as compared to the other one. Is that the case for psychiatry as well, or are there like any other differences in how the match process looks like compared to others? Dr. Sheikh?
So I think all my interviews came in October. Like I applied, everybody has the same deadline. So I applied, I think I submitted my application 2 days before the deadline. And then all my interviews came in October. After that, my ERAS was silent. And I just thought, oh my God, my application has gotten lost in some alternate dimension. They cannot find me anymore. What's wrong? So no, I did not have the trickle down effect that most people talk about, that, oh, the interviews slowly trickle down. All my interviews, I had 8 interviews and all of them came in October. After that, I didn't have any more interviews. But I don't know what Dr. Vakar's experience was like.
Yeah, for me, so it was different because I had mine in October. I had a few come in November as well, and then I had, I think, two in December as well. So I think for me, it was just like, coming in every month kind of like thing. So for me, they just trickled down. There was like nothing at the moment. Yeah, but I didn't have any in January. A lot of people say that they get in January as well, but I didn't get any in January. So like January was like a silent one for me. I was like, I'm done now. So for me, it was till December that I got I think my last interview was sometime I got in the first week of December. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So you also mentioned earlier how geographic preference is not something that psych applicants can really look into, right? So is that something that you did not, like the both of you did not do at all? Because that would like really reduce the number of programs. And then also, what about signaling? How does that play a part in the way that, when you're waiting for interviews and everything?
So I didn't do any geographical preference, and mainly because I just thought, I just want to cast my net as wide as possible. If I give a geographical preference, I just thought, what if like some places might think, oh, she prefers that area, so we're not going to send her an interview, because it's all very new. There's no data that you can look at to make like, a calculated, informed decision. It was going very by just whatever feels right. So I just like didn't do a geographical preference. But I do think that like Dr. Vakar has a point. We would like really run out of programs if we did that. Because I know that people who applied in internal medicine, they did geographical preference and it really worked out for them. Like all my friends who applied in internal medicine, they heard back from the places that were in their geographical preferences. I mean, I think for me, it was fine. Like for both of us, it was fine because we ended up matching. So that I don't think I'm like a good person to guide on that.
Yeah.
But signaling I can talk about, because so we were allowed 5 signals and I heard back from 2 of the places, 2 out of 5 of those places that I signaled at. So it was, again, I think like there is a way to go about that. So this was a place where I did do my research, and there was this, like, I divided my list. I said, there are going to be 2 safe programs where I'm going to signal. And then there's going to be 2 programs, which I'm like, okay, I cannot, I might hear from them, might not hear from them, but I'll signal them anyway. And then one program was like a reach program, which was in California. Mujhe wo bahut pasand tha. So I was like, chalo, let me just signal it and like try my luck and see if I hear back. I didn't, but like 2 of the 5 places I did hear back from. And I ended up matching at one of those places. And that place doesn't take like IMGs generally. So in my case, it did work out. And that would be the advice that I would give to anybody who is like looking into signaling, that just like, make like a smart calculated decision. 2 places are safe. 2 places which are like, okay, I could hear from them, might not hear from them. Because signaling is, again, it's just a way to get your application noticed, right? Otherwise, your application will just get missed. But if you signal them, they are more likely to take you seriously because you've also shown an interest, right? And then 1 or 2 programs can just be places which are like, reach places. There's no harm in trying, right? Like you only get to do this once, hopefully, inshallah.
Okay, yes. Dr. Vakar, is there anything that you would like to add?
No, I think Dr. Sheikh covered it really well, because I feel like the same thing. How I did my geographic preference was a no as well. I didn't do that. So not the best person to like refer to that. But
Yeah.
signaling, I did the same kind of like the same thing. So for me, one program was the one like, I really liked the program. I knew it was an out of reach program, but I thought I'd waste one signal on that. But the core one, I did like my research on that programs as well. That, 2 programs I wanted to be like, very safe programs, sure shot that, I would hear back from them. So those were the 2 ones. The number of IMGs they're taking and everything. And like, I think 2 were the ones that I've heard, they take IMGs and, they're good programs and good university programs. I did signal them. So I managed to hear back from 3 of my signals. So I mean, that's a fair amount.
Okay, all right. So another question that I think a lot of people have, and so I'd like to hear your opinion on this, is that when you're applying for the math cycle, should you apply to dual specialties if you're hoping for psych, or is that a bad idea? What are your thoughts on that?
So a lot of people tell you, like a lot of people told me that, you're just applying for psych. Oh my God, what are you doing? You're taking such a big risk. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. But, when you're in the math cycle, you realize there's so much background noise that, you need to decide for yourself. Like from this beginning, I was so short, like, I'm just going to apply into psych. But, in September, I was like, I'm not sure. Should I apply into internal medicine as well? Should I apply into family medicine as well? Or what if I don't get into psychiatry? But then I was like, my heart is just at psychiatry. I am not going to do anything other than psychiatry, because I feel like a psychiatry personal statement is very different that can be applied to internal medicine. If you're in internal medicine, you can use the same personal statement few tweaks and you can use it for peds, you can use it for family medicine. But I feel like a psychiatry personal statement, you cannot use it, for internal medicine or any other thing. And I felt like I was so exhausted after like the whole process. It's so much writing that I was just so tired of it. I was like, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
And I gave my step two in like September 2023. So, I had like just 3 weeks to write my application and my personal statement and everything. I didn't have a lot of time. So I was like, I'm just tired. I'm going to go for it. I'm listening to my gut basically. I'm like, I'm going to go for it and just apply for psych. So, and I managed to do it because, and even though after I did apply into psych, a lot of people for the next 2 weeks would tell me, you should apply for transitional years, you should apply for internal medicine, you still got time, programs are still accepting applications. But then, I knew I didn't want to do it. And then second, it a lot of cost as well now that you convert like USD to PKR. So, I was like, I don't think so. I'm ready to spend that amount of money. But if you want to risk it, like, you have that finances, you want to do it, sure, go ahead. But make sure then your application is like, you don't want to use the same personal statement. You want to make sure it's a little different. Your LORs need to be more diverse as well, just like not use your psych LORs. So I feel like your application needs to be well planned. You need to start planning it like a good 2-3 months before if you want to apply to dual specialties. Never a bad idea, but I feel like it's just a personal choice.
Okay, all right. Dr. Shaikh, is there something that you would
Yeah,
like to?
I agree. Like I got the same advice that you should do dual. And I was also like pretty torn about it. That like, okay, maybe, 'cause especially when I looked at the number of programs, I was like, oh no, there's like very few programs. Maybe I should like, do a backup, because like what's more important, matching or like matching into psychiatry? But again, like at the end, that was what I did. I said, you know what, I'm just gonna listen to my gut. Like I'm gonna do what I want to do, because you only get one shot at this. Or like, at least like I feel like, you owe it to yourself to do what you want to do. But what I did do was that there are these advanced tracks, the child and adolescent psychiatry tracks. And that is something that I'm currently interested in. I don't know like if that's how I'll feel once residency starts, but I do like I did want to like do a child and adolescent psychiatry fellowship. So I saw that there were a couple of programs which were offering like an advanced track, which is called the CAP track, child and adolescent psychiatry track. So I applied to 5 places with that track as well, because when you apply for your programs, you'll see in ERAS that like the tracks show up. So there's a general psychiatry categorical track, and then there's the CAP track as well, and you don't have to pay extra for applying to another track. So I felt like, okay, this is a compromise that I'd be like happy to live with. If I do hear back from like any CAP track places and I end up matching there, that's something that I'd be more than happy to do. So I did do that. I didn't hear back from any of those CAP track places, but that is something that I think people can look into, if they want to like really ease their anxiety a little bit. But again, it is a personal choice. Like if you are interested in IM or FM, then that's something that you can do. But yeah, make sure like your personal statement is different. And then your CV has like experiences to reflect both of those. Because I think, I don't know about other specialties, but psychiatric PDs, they don't take too kindly to being treated as a backup. So you don't want to give off that impression at all. Yeah.
Okay, yes. And I think what I got from this entire was to, like really follow your heart and do what you're really passionate about. Another thing, Dr. Sheikh, I believe that you wanted to talk about as well is that sometimes places that are traditionally IMG friendly might not extend an invite. And this is something I believe that we saw in this match cycle. Would you like to touch upon that a bit?
Yeah. So, I mean, this has been my experience. And even now that like, the match result has been announced, and there are like traditionally IMG friendly places, which you can find with a Google search. But if you go and you look up their resident roster, you'll see that like they haven't taken any IMGs this time around. Or like previously they would take 3 IMGs. This year they've just taken 1 IMG. And then there are a lot of places which don't really have IMGs in their roster, but they have chosen to like take a leap of faith and hire IMGs this time around. So I think like what the point of that was that like, like for IM and other specialties, there are like these very dedicated hospitals, which, like are IMG friendly. And that's just because, more IMGs apply there traditionally. So like the IMG ratio is like 15%, 20%. If you go up on Residency Explorer and you start looking at, number of non-US IMGs, for IM hospitals, you'll see like, 20, 35, even 40%. But like for psychiatry, 15 is a big deal if you have like 15%. Like I think I went down as low as like 2%. I was like, I'm gonna take it. So so that is something that people should keep in mind, that like if you're just going to go by, is it IMG friendly and what's the percentage, then you're going to have very limited options. And because this is like a field that is competitive, but I feel like in recent years, there's been a lot of interest in it also, like lots of people do want to apply. So the stats are not as what can I say, as concrete as they are for like other specialties. Like it's constantly evolving. So I think in this like specialty for psychiatry, you can afford to like, just cast a wide net, apply to places that don't traditionally take IMGs, because there's no guarantee that you will hear back from IMG friendly places. Like New York and East Coast is traditionally known as IMG friendly. I didn't get any invites from any New York places. I heard back from like Texas and Virginia and places that don't take IMGs. So that's the idea, that like just dream big and like shoot your shot, and you don't know like where you'll end up hearing from. And yeah, that's about it.
All right. I think truly an insightful conversation so far, and we're almost towards the end of this, and we're going to start with the last segment, which is basically scope of psychiatry. So another thing that obviously plays a significant role in choosing a specialty, and scope is and the future pathways, right? So Dr. Wakar, can you elaborate on what fellowship options are there and what career paths can one take?
Oh, so psychiatry in the US is quite diverse as compared to Pakistan. So, I think about of 7 different subspecialties. So there's one that's Dr. Sheikh already told, that there's a CAP track, which is basically a child and adolescent psychiatry fellowship. Apart from that, there's geriatrics as well. There's consultant liaison as well, forensic, and there's addiction psychiatry as well. And I am not sure, but I think there's another one which I might be missing. But there is like diversity which you can follow up on it, like after your residency. There's one thing that you can do is, like, for instance, a lot of people, all the fellowships apart from the child and adolescent one, that's 1 year. So a lot of programs, what they do is like, in your 3rd year, if you want to do a child and adolescent psychiatry, what you can do is like, you don't do like 4th year of residency in the US, but rather you transition directly into a child and adolescent psychiatry fellowship program. So your whole program comes down to like 5 years then. Like that's one option that they give you as well. So with all the fellowships combined, like, if you decide to pursue a fellowship, it's going to be a total of 5 years. The whole of the training is going to be. So that's one option that you get over there. And I feel like, apart from that, that's like a traditional career path that you choose. But I feel like that there are like a lot of doctors who are now working as like, mental health consultants, and like, a lot of those in a lot of different tech startups that are coming in. So, they're like diversifying their career in those terms as well. So I feel like that's something I'm not very familiar with, but I think Dr. Sheikh worked at some place like this, so she might be able to like highlight more of that. But that's like not the traditional path if you want to further diversify your career. So like that's an option as well.
Dr. Sheikh, would you like to add to this?
Yeah, sure. So like apart from traditional fellowship options, yeah, there's like telepsychiatry, which gives you like lots of flexibility. Like you can work from anywhere. And this is more of like a lifestyle specialty, right? So this means that you have like more flexibility in terms of hours, in terms of like your work schedule. And the compensation for this field, for now at least, is better than it is for other specialties, because of just the need, right? Like there is a mental health crisis, there is a mental health epidemic that's going on. It's happening all over the world. The only difference is that places like the US and other developed countries, they're pouring more money into this. Like there's more funding for mental health startups and mental health initiatives. There's more money being put into research. So like psychiatry right now is a booming field, and it's a great field to be a part of. But again, like the money and the perks should not be the reason to do it, because again, it is like a very taxing field, and this is something that you should be passionate about. That's the only way that you'll survive long term, right? Otherwise you'll just get burnt out. Other than that, yeah, so there are like startups that you can be part of. So the mental health clinic that I worked at, that was a clinic and a startup. So it was more of like a consultancy service. So the doctors that I was working with, they would provide consultation services to different companies. Like, for example, we worked with a media company. We went to a media news outlet and we gave them mental health debriefing sessions to all of their journalists and TV anchors and presenters, because, we live in like a very very difficult times, right? Like people who present the news, etc., they are under like a lot of stress. They see very difficult things all the time. So we were invited, like the doctors were invited to come and give a debriefing session and talk about how you can cope in difficult times, how to regulate yourself, things like that. We worked with schools as well and currently we are working with a school to build a mental health curriculum, which actually helps people understand their children, understand their emotions better. So things like that are definitely up and coming, and they're on the horizon. So that's something that people want to do, they can. I think psychiatry like offers you the opportunity to do something non-traditional as well, because it's something that can like find its way anywhere, right? Like if you're a surgeon, then yeah, you need to be in a hospital and you need to have your equipment, etc. But mental health is health, right? So that's something that everybody can benefit from and everybody needs that. So I think, yeah, that's definitely something unique about psychiatry. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. I think this has been a great conversation so far. But before we close off, is there one piece of advice that you would like to tell all psych aspirants? So, Dr. Vakar, if you can go ahead first.
I think for me, that would be two things that I would tell
Yeah.
people, like, if even if you're like early in your med school or like later, if you're passionate about psychiatry, start building your CV. Do little things, volunteer experience. You can visit old age homes, etc., etc. Like reach out to your seniors, those who are in final year doing a research project. Do it with them. Reach out to your consultants. Reach out to anybody you can, like possibly can. The most they can say is no to you. Like, what's the harm that's going to come? But reach out to as many people as you can. For instance, if you reach out to 100 people, maybe two are going to respond to you, and that is going to where your journey is going to start. So, just reach out, build your CV, and that is where, like, and see where it takes you. And the second would be, when you're applying for the math season, there are going to be a lot of people telling you a lot of different things. At the end of the day, it's your story, it's your like journey. Just listen to what you are, what you want to do, like, and trust me, that's going to be best advice that you can give to yourself, because you don't want to, you don't want to be like end up at 3 months later and be like, oh my god, I shouldn't have listened to that person. So just go with your gut. If you feel like, what 10 other people are doing this, but you don't feel like doing it, don't do it, because nobody knows you better than you. So I think that would be my advice to everybody.
Perfect. Dr. Sheikh?
Yeah, great advice, Dr. Vakar, especially like the second advice that you gave. I couldn't agree more. I think people who want to do psychiatry, I would say definitely you should do it. It's a great field to be a part of. And like, yeah, don't listen to the naysayers, right? Like if people are saying, oh, bahut mushkil hai, hota hi nahi hai, you're never going to know until you don't try, right? Like, yeah, it's difficult. We're not saying it's not. It is difficult, but so is matching, right? That's also difficult. So if you just find good mentors, I would definitely say that, because like I think that's what really helped me. I had really good mentors who knew me, who understood me, so they gave me good advice. So that's something that everybody should work on at an early point. And again, this is like a long journey. Like not the first person that you reach out is not going to be like a good mentor for you. You might not click with them, or you might if you are lucky, but in most cases that doesn't happen. So the important thing is that don't lose hope. Like keep reaching out to as many people as you can. Eventually you will find, good mentors who give you advice according to what works for you. And even after that, like, there will be so many instances where you will have to make the decision for yourself, because people can just tell you, right, according to the best of their ability. It's your application, it's your life. So you have to have faith in yourself, and then have like that confidence to make that decision, right? They're like, I know what I'm doing and I know that this will work for me. So yeah, that would definitely be my advice, that find good mentors and definitely follow your gut, like cultivate the habit of listening to your intuition. Like that goes a long way in life also, not just for the match. So it's a good skill to have in
Yeah.
general.
Wonderful advice from the both of you. So once again, like thank you so much for your time and for your invaluable insight. I personally learned a lot from this conversation, and I'm certain that our audience would have as well. On that note, we will also be bringing more episodes of It's a Match, going into further like other US specialties. So stay updated with us across our socials, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. And then we'll see you another time. Goodbye.